And Elvis Presley's granddaughter, Riley Keough, is opening up about her plans for Graceland and a promise to her mother.
I think for her, it was this place where she could be like wild and free.
For over 4 decades, it was the most guarded secret in rock and roll history. An entire floor sealed off from the world, locked the very day Elvis Presley died, and untouched since. No cameras, no visitors, not even VIPs with exclusive access have ever seen what lies upstairs at Graceland. And for years, it remained that way, until now. In an unexpected turn that's captivated both historians and fans alike, Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, and now the sole heir to his estate, has done what no Presley ever dared. She has opened up, not for publicity, not for profit, but for legacy. What she reveals about the upstairs rooms is not just about vintage furniture or relics from a golden era. It's about hidden pain, private rituals, and a deeply personal side of Elvis Presley that the world never knew existed. What was Elvis really hiding? Why did he retreat to this private space more and more in his final years? And what secrets did he leave behind, tucked into forgotten corners, sealed boxes, and handwritten notes no one was meant to see? This is not just a story about a house. This is a story about a man lost in his own fame, and the granddaughter brave enough to let the truth out, long before the velvet ropes, the security gates, and the thousands of visitors who file in daily with cameras and curiosity. Graceland was something entirely different. Built in 1939 by a Memphis doctor named Thomas Moore and his wife Ruth, the colonial revival home sat quietly on a 13-acre plot just outside the city, with 10 rooms, tall white columns, arched windows, and a wraparound porch that echoed Southern elegance. It was never intended to be a spectacle. It was dignified, private, and serene, a far cry from the blinding lights of Hollywood. And that's exactly what drew Elvis Presley in. In 1957, Elvis was only 22, already a global phenomenon, chased by paparazzi, mobbed by fans, and exhausted from a life lived under relentless public scrutiny. He didn't fall in love with Graceland for its grandeur. He chose it because it was hidden, because it offered something he hadn't felt in years: silence. The price he paid was $102,500 at the time, roughly $900,000 today. But it wasn't about the money, it was about escape. As Presley once confided to a close friend, Graceland wasn't just a place to live, it was a place to disappear, a sanctuary where he could remove the costume of the king and just be Elvis from Tupelo. And in the years that followed, that house would evolve with him, not into a showpiece for fans, but a deeply personal reflection of his inner world. Graceland was never designed to be the world's second most visited home after the White House. It was meant to be a hiding place. And hiding is exactly what Elvis would soon do. As Elvis Presley's fame swelled beyond comprehension, so did his need for control over his time, his space, and most of all, his privacy. While the downstairs of Graceland transformed into a spectacle, filled with mirrored staircases, bold colors, and themed rooms, the upstairs became something else entirely. It was his last refuge, a sacred zone that even his closest friends and staff were rarely allowed to enter. Upstairs wasn't just private, it was sacred. And on August 16, 1977, the very day Elvis died, that space was sealed forever. Vernon Presley, his father and estate executor, made the decision within hours. The upstairs would remain untouched, indefinitely. No tour groups, no photos, no exceptions. According to Vernon, those rooms weren't where Elvis died, they were where he lived. It was where he laughed with friends, prayed alone, wrote notes in the margins of books, and ultimately, where he crumbled under the weight of an empire built on his name. And that's why, for over 4 decades, the second floor of Graceland has been locked in time. The bedroom remains as it was that final day. His clothes hang undisturbed in the closet. His cologne still sits on the dresser. The book he was reading is still on the nightstand. Even the clock above his bed is frozen at the exact time he was found, 2:30 p.m. It's not a museum exhibit. It's a time capsule, a tomb of memory. And for generations of Presley family members, including Lisa Marie and now Riley Keough, preserving that silence has become a solemn duty, a symbolic line that separates the public legacy of Elvis Presley from the private man he tried desperately to protect. For Riley Keough, Graceland was never just a museum. It was never about the velvet ropes or the fanfare. It was home. or at least the haunting memory of one. As a child, Riley would accompany her mother, Marie Presley, to the estate, walking the same halls millions of fans had toured. But unlike the visitors snapping photos of Elvis's gold records and jungle room furniture, Riley knew there was a part of the house no one else could touch: the upstairs. That sealed floor had an almost magical pull for her. She remembers trying to sneak up the staircase, her footsteps hushed, heart pounding, as if entering another world. She wasn't allowed to touch anything. In fact, most of the time, she was ushered away before she got too far. But even those brief glimpses left an impression. Riley recalled the stillness, the eerie, perfect quiet that wrapped around the second floor like a blanket. There was no sound, no movement, just the frozen essence of a man she never met, but felt everywhere. She once said it felt like Elvis hadn't disappeared, only stepped out of the room and left his soul behind. For Riley, those early, quiet moments became the seeds of something deeper, a connection not built on fan worship or legacy, but on blood, memory, and mystery. And as she grew older, that connection deepened. The questions multiplied. Who was Elvis really? Not the legend, but the man who hid himself upstairs, behind locked doors and whispered stories. Now, as the steward of the Presley estate, and the only person with full access to that sacred floor, Riley isn't just protecting it, she's confronting it. And in doing so, she's slowly beginning to unlock a side of Elvis that even her mother never spoke about. What Riley Keough discovered next was something even the most devoted Elvis fans could never have imagined. Something no tour, no biography, no documentary had ever uncovered. It happened during one of her solitary visits upstairs, a place she now had legal authority to access, but still approached with reverence. The rooms were exactly as remembered: silent, frozen, sacred. But tucked beneath the bed, barely visible through the shadows, she noticed an object coated in dust and age. A simple, unassuming cardboard shoebox, its edges frayed and colour faded. Across the lid, written in bold capital letters, were 3 haunting words: "Do not open." For a moment, Riley hesitated, not out of fear, but out of respect. What could possibly be inside that Elvis himself didn't want seen? And more importantly, what would it mean for her family? But something about the box called to her, not as a tabloid curiosity, but as a granddaughter seeking truth. Inside were letters, real, handwritten, yellowing with time. One was addressed to her mother, Marie Presley. Another, even more mysterious, simply said, "To whoever finds this after I'm gone." Riley hasn't revealed what the letters contained. In interviews, she's been firm. They were deeply personal, private, and not meant for public consumption. But what she has admitted is staggering. Those letters changed the way she saw her grandfather forever. Not as a distant icon or pop culture titan, but as a deeply wounded, reflective, spiritual man. A man grappling with his legacy, his regrets, and a desperate yearning for connection beyond fame. The letters weren't written for the world, they were written for family, for future generations who might try to make sense of the man behind the music. And in finding them, Riley began to understand that the upstairs of Graceland wasn't hiding memorabilia, it was holding the missing pieces of Elvis Presley's soul. After the letters, Riley Keough thought she had uncovered the most intimate pieces of Elvis Presley's hidden life. But Graceland wasn't done speaking. On the nightstand beside his untouched bed, she found something else, a spiral-bound notebook. Its cover was plain, its pages slightly curled at the edges from age. But what was inside offered an unfiltered look into a man unraveling beneath the surface. The handwriting was unmistakably his, strong but uneven, like it had been written in haste or pain. At first, the entries seemed scattered. Verses underlined from scripture, personal prayers, half-finished thoughts jotted in the margins. Some pages were filled with philosophical questions, others with raw, emotional outbursts. But one page stood out from the rest, one that made Riley stop cold. It contained only a single word, written over and over again, dozens of times. The word was free, no context, no explanation, just the word itself, filling the page like a cry from deep within. For Riley, it was a revelation. It wasn't just a longing for privacy. It was a spiritual desperation. Elvis Presley, the most famous man on earth, was quietly begging for release. From the cameras, from the drugs, from the weight of being the king. He didn't want more attention. He wanted escape. This one word, repeated obsessively, cut through decades of rumors, scandals, and public fascination. It was a man's internal battle laid bare, not for the press, not for legacy, just for himself. Riley later said it was this page, more than any artifact or headline, that made her feel closest to him, because it showed the truth no museum tour ever could. Elvis Presley wasn't living in a fortress of luxury. He was trapped in a gilded cage. And in those final years, upstairs in Graceland, he wasn't chasing fame. He was trying to survive it. Just when Riley Keough believed she had uncovered every trace of her grandfather's private world, she noticed something else. Something no one had ever mentioned. At the far end of the upstairs hallway, past the master bedroom, the bathroom, and a closet, was a narrow corridor that seemed to lead nowhere. But at its end was a door. Small, unmarked, almost deliberately hidden. It wasn't on any blueprint. It had never been mentioned in the official Graceland tours or documents. Even longtime staff had no knowledge of what lay beyond it. Riley opened it gently. Inside was a room unlike any other in the house. No bed, no windows, no decorations. Just soft cushions on the floor, a single dim lamp in the corner, and a white noise machine that still hummed faintly when plugged in. The air inside felt different, thicker, quieter, sacred. This, Riley discovered, was Elvis Presley's private meditation room, a place of complete stillness where the king of rock and roll ceased to exist. No costumes, no gold records, no screaming crowds, just a man confronting himself. Books lined a small shelf, volumes on Christian mysticism, Eastern philosophy, energy healing, and spirituality. Some were underlined, others were filled with handwritten margin notes, fragments of thought, questions about life, death, destiny. This wasn't performance, it was vulnerability. Riley described the room as stepping into his soul, a place built not to impress, but to protect. Elvis didn't just want to escape, he built an altar to silence. And in this room, he was no longer a performer, husband, father, or legend. He was simply a human being trying to quiet the chaos. Most family members never even knew it existed. But now, through Riley's discovery, the world sees a side of Elvis never documented in books or interviews. This tiny hidden sanctuary reveals the greatest contradiction of all. The man who could electrify an entire stadium spent his final days seeking total silence. And in that silence, perhaps, he found the only peace fame never gave him. For decades, Graceland has been shrouded in mystery, not just because of what lies behind locked doors, but because of what might lie beneath it. Among the most persistent and sensational theories surrounding Elvis Presley is the idea that he didn't die in 1977. He disappeared. And the tool for that vanishing act? A secret tunnel, allegedly built beneath the Graceland estate. It sounds absurd, like something pulled from a tabloid headline, but the theory refuses to die. According to believers, somewhere on the grounds of Graceland, possibly near the meditation garden or rear carport, exists an underground passageway that leads away from the main house, ending somewhere in the dense woods behind the property. The idea first caught fire in the late 1970s when a man, eerily resembling Elvis, was spotted at Memphis International Airport using the alias John Burroughs, a name Elvis reportedly used when checking into hotels. Though dismissed as a lookalike, the sighting lit a spark that never quite faded. Since then, rumors of Elvis in Michigan, in California, even in the audience of an Elvis impersonator show in Nevada, have kept the legend alive. In 1987, a freelance journalist claimed he found a sealed-off concrete entry near the back of the property, but produced no proof. And while official blueprints of Graceland show no tunnels, skeptics point out they also didn't show the meditation room Riley discovered. Some former staff members have fueled the speculation further, offering cryptic statements like, "There are parts of Graceland not even we were allowed to see." When asked about the theory, Riley Keough offers no confirmation, but she also doesn't rush to debunk it. Instead, she focuses on preserving truth, not chasing fantasy. But that may be the point, because the tunnel theory has never really been about fact. It's about yearning. The idea that Elvis, suffocated by fame and heartbreak, found a way to escape it all. And after everything Riley has uncovered, the letters, the cries for freedom, the isolation upstairs, maybe it's not so far-fetched. Maybe people need to believe he got out, that somewhere Elvis Presley stepped into that tunnel, walked away from the spotlight, and finally became what he wrote again and again, free. As if the mysteries of Graceland's hidden rooms and whispered escape plans weren't enough, a different kind of storm has quietly brewed around Elvis Presley's legacy, one rooted not in rumors of survival, but in bloodlines and billion-dollar stakes. After the passing of Lisa Marie Presley in 2023, control of the estate was transferred to her daughter, Riley Keough. On the surface, it appeared to be a smooth transition, but behind the scenes, it triggered a wave of legal disputes, power struggles, and age-old questions that no one in the Presley family has ever dared to answer publicly. Within weeks, Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife and Lisa Marie's mother, contested a 2016 trust amendment that named Riley as the sole heir. The disagreement was eventually settled out of court, but it peeled back a layer of vulnerability surrounding Graceland and what it truly means to own the Presley name. And with that came the re-emergence of a decades-old question: did Elvis Presley have other children? Over the years, dozens of individuals have claimed to be secret sons or daughters of the king. Some came forward with personal letters, old photographs, or alleged DNA results tied to strands of Elvis's hair sold at auction. One man even went as far as to request the exhumation of Elvis's body for testing, a request the courts flatly denied. The Presley estate has never formally acknowledged any of these claims. Riley, following in her mother's footsteps, has refused to comment on them, but the silence hasn't stopped the speculation. Some of these claimants point to alleged relationships Elvis had in the 1950s and 60s, encounters they say were buried under non-disclosure agreements, hush money, and quiet departures. Most of these stories collapse under scrutiny, but some persist. And they persist for one reason: the Presley name is no longer just a legacy, it's a global brand. The estate controls not only Graceland and its intellectual property, but also Elvis's image, name rights, and royalties estimated in the hundreds of millions. Anyone with a valid claim to his bloodline isn't just asking for family recognition, they're entering a legal and financial empire. Riley Keough may be the face of the Presley legacy now, but that legacy is under constant siege from lawyers, distant relatives, and shadowy figures with old stories and questionable evidence. Whether or not any secret heirs exist may never be fully known, but one thing is clear: behind the music, the fame, and the locked doors, the most powerful part of Elvis's empire is still very much contested. And Riley, like her grandfather, is discovering that being at the center of it isn't a gift, it's a burden. Beyond the rumors of tunnels, secret heirs, and locked rooms, there lingers one final mystery inside Graceland, one that strikes at the heart of Elvis Presley's artistry. Did he leave behind music the world has never heard? It's not just idle speculation, it's a theory grounded in fact, whispered by former musicians, studio insiders, and family confidants who claim that Elvis never stopped recording, even as his health declined. In 1976, just a year before his death, Elvis held 2 hauntingly intimate recording sessions in the now famous Jungle Room. Tracks like Way Down and Moody Blue were captured there, later released posthumously. But according to his longtime producer, Felton Jarvis, not everything from those sessions made it to RCA. Jarvis once revealed that Elvis would often sit at his piano upstairs late into the night, recording raw vocal takes and personal versions of gospel hymns, just for himself. No producers, no band. Just the man and his music. Rumors began to swirl that reel-to-reel tapes of these sessions were quietly stashed away in Graceland's upper floor. Never labeled, never archived. One anonymous former employee claimed in a fan forum that a small stack of unlabeled audio tapes sat on a shelf in Elvis's upstairs study, just collecting dust. No official source has verified this, and Riley Keough hasn't spoken publicly about these specific tapes. But she has confirmed something that adds fuel to the fire. Not everything in Graceland has been catalogued. In fact, her team is currently working with preservation specialists to digitize boxes of handwritten lyrics, personal notebooks, and yes, audio reels. Some items have never been seen by anyone outside the Presley family. Riley's efforts go far beyond mere inheritance. She's not greenlighting biopics or cashing in on unreleased tracks for a viral moment. She's protecting, organizing, and curating her grandfather's creative legacy with precision. But what's on those tapes, if they truly exist, remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in music history. Could Elvis Presley's final song still be waiting to be heard, hidden in the very rooms that fans have never been allowed to enter? If so, Riley holds the key, and her decisions in the years ahead could reshape not just the myth of Elvis, but the music industry's understanding of his final days. In the end, what Riley Keough has done isn't just brave, it's unprecedented. She could have commercialized the legend, sold exclusive access, and turned Graceland's most guarded secrets into headlines. But instead, she chose reverence over revenue. She chose silence over spectacle. By opening up about the hidden upstairs of Graceland, not by showing it, But by honoring it, Riley has reframed how the world sees Elvis Presley, not as a caricature of fame, not as an untouchable icon, but as a man, complex, conflicted, spiritual, and in many ways, tragically human. The upstairs rooms remain locked, the tapes remain unheard, the letters remain unread, but somehow, we now understand more about Elvis than ever before, because Riley let us in, not physically, but emotionally. She's not just preserving a home, she's preserving a soul. And through her efforts, Graceland is no longer just a tourist destination. It's a time capsule of a man who gave everything to the world and asked only for peace in return. So as the world continues to speculate about tunnels, heirs, and lost songs, one truth remains. The most powerful legacy isn't what Elvis left behind, but how deeply he wanted to be understood. And thanks to Riley, that understanding has finally begun. If this story moved you, share it. Let others know the truth behind the myth. Subscribe for more untold stories from the icons we thought we knew, and the people who truly knew